What's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken and welcome back to another video. Diminishing Returns is an important game mechanic in Paladins that affects just about every aspect of building loadouts and buying items. It's crucial to understand Diminishing Returns if you want to build the most effective loadout possible, so in this video I'll be breaking down exactly how this confusing and hidden game mechanic works. Now before we get into the video, I just want to mention real quick that I'm thinking of hosting a 5v5 tournament over the summer that'll be open to anybody of any rank. There will be two different brackets for lower tiers and high tiers to try and make things fair, and it should be a lot of fun. If you would be interested in doing a tournament, please fill out the form in the description. It'll take less than a minute, and it'll help me gauge how many people would be interested. If you want additional information, please check out my post on the community tab or just message me directly if you have any questions. But anyways, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Diminishing Returns is a mechanic that makes most effects and augments such as extra movement speed, stuns, and lifesteal less effective when you stack multiple of them on your character. This mechanic guarantees that you will receive the highest value for a buff you receive, and then scales down all the other values to make them less powerful. For instance, if you have Life Rip 3, which gives 30% lifesteal, and Ash's Indomitable card, which gives her 50% lifesteal on top of that, you receive the 50% from Ash's card, but only about 10% from Life Rip, giving you about 60% lifesteal total. This makes Life Rip a pretty much useless buy when running this card with Ash, all thanks to Diminishing Returns. This mechanic is used mainly to keep all the different effects in check, so you don't end up running around with 200% movement speed and 80% lifesteal, and it works differently for different types of effects. Most effects have a standard cap at 95%, while increased reload speed is only capped at 60% and movement speed is capped at 150%. Movement speed and all other effects get scaled differently as well, with Diminishing Returns being applied slightly heavier to standard effects, while movement speed gets affected slightly less by Diminishing Returns. You can easily calculate how much of a bonus you'll actually receive from stacking different values by using the Diminishing Returns calculator, which is linked in the description. It's important to take both Diminishing Returns and the maximum value of an effect into consideration when making a loadout. For instance, if you use an increased reload speed card for champions like Maldamba or Dredge where you'll be buying Deft Hands, you want to try and get that value as close to 20% as possible. Reload speed is one of the few effects that doesn't get affected by Diminishing Returns, but instead just stacks one on top of the other, so if you have 20% reload speed in your loadout, you can buy Deft Hands too and receive the exact maximum reload speed you can possibly have. Any less and you lose value from Deft Hands 3, and any more and you lose value from your loadout card. In general, when you're building a loadout that applies different effects such as lifesteal and damage reduction, you should take Diminishing Returns into consideration to see how much you're actually getting from each card and the items you'll be buying. Sometimes a card in your loadout can become an absolute waste of loadout points because of Diminishing Returns. Now, there are a few effects that are immune to the downscaling of Diminishing Returns. Healing reductions such as Cauterize simply apply the highest value out of all the different procs on a character, so Cauterize 3 gets applied instead of Cauterize 1, and Willow's Dead Zone is the ultimate healing reduction that gets applied over all the rest. Damage amps such as those from Luminary Genos and Field Study Torvald count as separate effects, so Diminishing Returns doesn't apply to them either. And as I mentioned before, Deft Hand stacks additively instead of going through the standard Diminishing Returns formula, but it still has a cap at 60% that it cannot exceed. Cooldown reduction is quite possibly the most confusing effect that Diminishing Return affects. There are a ton of different cooldown reduction cards that apply different types of cooldown reductions, and then there's Chronos to top them all off. There are two different types of cooldown reductions, those that reduce the maximum cooldown, and those that simply reduce the cooldown once the cooldown is already active. Let's take Grover for example. Grover has two different cards that could be used to reduce the cooldown of his Blossom, Perennial and Adrenaline, which reduce the maximum cooldown of his Blossom and reduce all active cooldowns by a set value respectively. Only Perennial gets affected by Diminishing Returns, however, since it reduces the base cooldown, which can also be affected by Chronos. If a cooldown reduction card that reduces the base cooldown is larger than however much the cooldown would be reduced by Chronos, then Chronos will end up helping out less than if you were to not put that card in. This is how Ceres can use Soulforge and receive almost no benefit from Chronos because of how heavily Diminishing Returns is applied. On the other hand, since reducing active cooldowns with cards like Adrenaline is treated as a separate effect, it does not get affected by Diminishing Returns when stacking with Perennial and Chronos. This makes cards like these extremely valuable to have in a loadout where reducing your cooldowns as much as possible is key. Overall, understanding how Diminishing Returns works is extremely important, since it will let you optimize your loadouts and make them as strong as possible, and it can help prevent you from accidentally buying items that make little to no impact on your gameplay. But anyways, that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have enjoyed and understand how Diminishing Returns works a little bit better, then make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more additional content like this. Also, be sure to check out my Twitch, as I'll try and stream frequently this coming summer, and also join my Discord server, which is linked in the description to pick up tips, leave suggestions, and become a part of our active community. And finally, don't forget to let me know your thoughts on a community tournament over the summer. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.